Welcome back to Sci-Fi Humanity, where we bring you incredible stories from the far reaches of the galaxy. Today, we delve into an epic tale of technological arrogance and unexpected might in our story titled, "Our Primitive Weapons Were Ridiculed by Aliens Until We Pulled the Trigger." Join us as we explore an encounter that shattered preconceptions and proved that sometimes the simplest tools can be the most devastating. Let's dive in. The XT-97 cruiser shuddered as it breached the planet's upper atmosphere. Commander Val Rec hissed in satisfaction of the sensor readings, habitable moderate gravity of biosphere teeming with exploitable resources, and best of all, a weak localized energy signature indicating a single underdeveloped settlement. Scan complete commandership subordinate or LISC is the invoice crackling through the bridge comm data. It set them into matches established templates for early-stage civilizations. Out of the mints they'll wreck rumbled as multifaceted eyes fixed on the schematic of the unsuspecting human colony. Primarily kinetic projectile weaponry commanded large bulky platforms, low velocity, easily diffused by standard shielding. A dismissive trill escaped LIS mandibles, a pathetic display by in the advanced species. They'll wreck curled a thin, rigid tentacle and agreement. These primitive creatures wouldn't know what hit them. Even their distress signals would never reach another star system before the XT-97 completed its civilizing mission. "Hail them, Fisk," a commander ordered.
"Well, let them understand the futility of resistance,"
Was chirped and began tapping into the universal translator matrix. A moment later, a booming synthesized voice echoed across the human settlement's crude, calm frequencies. "Attention, primitives of this world. You stand in violation of the Zeal Expansive Compact. Surrender your settlement, and you may be spared extermination." The human response was slow, then Devil Rex irritation and crackled fatally over the comm line as a burst of laughter. "You hear that, resident?" A gruff, accented voice echoed. "They want us to surrender." Another voice, younger tinged with all, replied, "I imagine visuals through to the bridge now, Commander." On the main screen, the image resolved the grizzled human crew datapad in his hands, standing amidst what appeared to be the settlement's command center, and other human crouched beside him adjusting lenses, and a bulky optical device. "All around you, pompous bastards." Grizzled human drove into his primitive calm device.
You got get like edge.
The screen flickered again, this time resolving into a warped fish-eyed view of the XT-97 Commander Velrak, reflexively curl that tentacle in disgust. These primates are even more aesthetically displeasing up close.
Real estate, get me a munitions or eat out on those things.
The gruff human barked. Darkness Solutions locked on all visible hostile. A new voice replied, crisp and far too calm for someone facing imminent annexation. Velrex straightened and 10-eye twitching, and a mixture of amusement mile front.
This great jet dash threatened us open its shadow lisk. I shall enlighten it on the true meaning of power.
His words echoed across the human command center, delivered in a synthesized approximation of their barbaric tongue. "Your defiance is noted and deemed futile. Our energy shields render your crude projectile weapons obsolete. This conflict has been one logical outcome."
Yeah, well, you get it. Yeah.
The grizzled human interrupted with a dismissive wave of his hand.
Mirror guns, Ventide yields, blah, blah, blah. How about this? You fire first. Let's see how obsolete these guns really are.
Vilrek shattered a genuine laughter. Lisk mirrored. Is mirth these creatures gone truly mad in the face of overwhelming force?
So be the wreck boomed. Palladio and density pulse, they say that primary structure.
A wave of his tentacles, and List scurrying to the weapon controls. A focused energy beam shimmered to life at the bow of the XT-97. A brilliant lance of emerald green that slashed towards the heart of the human settlement. It struck their main command building squarely and did nothing. The humans watched the core skating energy fields shimmer and dissipate against the crude blocky structure. Commander Val ROG blinked, all 6 of his eyes, unsure if his visual receptors had malfunctioned. "Commander," this voice was a thin chirp of confusion. The shielding appears in Earth. No energy transfer of any kind impress about their X-bellow echoed across the 1697 bridge.
Cycled and crazy power amplitude. Again.
Again, the crackling green bolt lensed forth. Again, the results fail to match expectations. No scorching glass marks, no overloading circuits, not even a flicker of the human's crude lights. On the main view screen, the grizzled human let out a low humorous chuckle as weathered face tightened into a scowl.
All right, boys, he barked. Let them know why you don't bring a pea shooter to a railgun fat.
Hi, sorry to interrupt the story, but a lot of you who are listening right now aren't actually subscribed. It's completely free and allows our stories to pop up on your feed much more often. If you're enjoying the story, please consider clicking the subscribe button underneath the video right now. Back to the story. The younger humans beside him, the one who would control the optical feed, grinned wildly. Oh, with pleasure, sir. His fingers flew over a chipped, worn control panel with practice ease. Commander Velrak opened to calm channel, intending to bellow when rage threat, when an odd droning sound cut through the bridge. It rose rapidly in pitch, an ear-splitting whine that seemed to shake the very whole of the XT-97. He claims to wildly around, searching for the source just in time to see a glint of light streaking toward the cruiser. Though Rex's eyes widened, the primitive projectile was impossibly fast, a blinding speck against the dark veil of space. It struck squarely. The strike was utterly soundless, the impact visible only as a momentary distortion in the cruiser's shimmering energy shields. Then, the distortion bloomed outward. The flawless integrity of the shield collapsed, warping inwards. For the briefest second, it seemed as if the very fabric of reality buckled before a yawning hole erupted in the whole of the 1697. The bridge erupted into chaos. Alarms shrieked, and dissonant tones and flashing lights painted the crew consoles, and a riot of crimson and amber. Consoles exploded, showered, and Lisk, and the other Q crew with debris. Velrak himself was thrown from his command chair, tumbling across the tilting deck. Miraculously, the ship held together. Secondary systems kicked in sealing breaches. Desperately rerouting power, Velrak scrambled to his feet, and a hiss of pain escaping him as one of his tentacles scraped against exposed sparking circuitry. That's rip-off, the roared, cutting through the din of alarms and panic cries. Primary shield generator offline. Whisk chirped as always edged into a panic trill massive hole, but each of the next three, and for failing in multiple sections. Another blinding speck flashed in the viewports. This time it punched straight through the aft auxiliary engine pod, the projectile emerging in a shower of vaporized metal and shredded circuits. The XC-97 shuddered the rear section, erupting in a brilliant flare of exploding plasma. Commander. The younger human's voice filtered through the comps, laced with an odd mix of awe and excitement. That was a tungsten slug at 10% a lot speed.
How's it taste?
Velrak stared in horror at the dissipating debris field. Once a vital part of his pristine cruiser, their intelligence had been fatally flawed. These weren't bulky platforms or low-velocity weapons. Each was a planet killer in miniature, a seminal virus. He snarled, pushing past a cluster of terrified crew members.
Retired and fire shot to get better weapons and placements.
The 1697 lurched violently as its remaining engines desperately pushed it into a chaotic corkscrewing, evasive pattern. Weapon systems flickered back online, targeting arrays desperately locking onto the rapidly shifting positions of the human weapons below. In response to humans fired again. This time the projectile was smaller, faster, and impossibly thin sliver of light against the blackness of space. It arced erratically, skipping and spinning in defiance of conventional physics before punching through the 1697 central sensor array. By Lewis shrieked, his voice a discordant mix of terror and despair. Prime metadata Guinean systems, though Rex's hearts pounded sickeningly with each report of further damage. These primitives possessed the power to obliterate starships from across a solar system, their projectiles striking with the force of rogue asteroids. The Gellus vaunted superiority felt comically thin in the face of such raw destructive potential.
Content traits secondary batteries overwhelm that put defenses.
They'll recommend that as voice or rasping bellow, a barrage of crackling green energy bolts lanced forth what remained of the XT-97's arsenal, targeting a cluster of boxy structures surrounding the human command center. The humans must have guessed their intent, for a desperate shatter filled their calm frequencies, but their countermeasures were pathetic. Net-like objects, small and dim, were hurled before the incoming fire. The crackling energy washed over them, vaporizing them instantly. Except they achieved their aim. Each dissipated in a cloud of chaff or some other substance, momentarily obscuring energy signatures and scattering geo-targeting solutions. By the time the beams found their targets, it was too late. Another flicker of impossibly fast light, and the XT-97 screamed again as another engine pod burst apart. The crews are shuddered, yawning sluggishly now. Its fate was sealed. Panic swelled and consumed the bridge. Crew members fought, shoved, and trampled one another as they sought escape pods. Yet within the maelstrom, Veil Rock felt a strange surge of clarity. This was no calculated retreat, no organized battle plan. It was a rout, a slaughter, the geo-expensive compact, the glorious vision of interstellar dominion, lay in tatters, defeated not by superior strategy, but by the primitive savagery of these apes. In the final moments, the grizzled human's gruff voice returned to the calm, tinged with the faintest hint of pity. "Ah, all right, all right. Listen, alien. I don't know who you are or why you showed up Spartan threats. But this isn't a bad day for you. Hold back now, and maybe, just maybe, when Chuck is due, a misunderstanding." Well, Rick wanted to bellow defiance threats to anything to salvage the last fragments of his pride. Yet no words emerged. He can only stare at the viewports as another railgun spat its payload of death, projectile burning ever closer with impossible swiftness. Him coming on, put forward, can't shake target book. The terror had fully overtaken the technician's voice now. A flicker of movement called Velrek's attention. The grizzled human, the leader, stood alone amid the chaos of his command center. With a sigh that carried over the comms, he tossed his primitive datapad aside and stood straight, facing the main viewport as if awaiting the inevitable. Then the lights swallowed it all. The viewport, the grizzled human, the remains of the human settlement. In that blinding flash, Commander Veilrek realized a profound truth. The Zeal were not conquerors, merely the latest in a long lineage of fools stumbling blindly into a galaxy far more dangerous than they could ever comprehend. When the light had faded, the XT-97 was no longer a warship, but a drifting, crippled hulk. Its once gleaming hull was pockmarked and scorched, vital systems flickering and failing. What remained of Commander Vilrek's crew huddled in the few still functional escape pods, their eyes wide with shock and fear. Velrek stood amidst them, his pride fully shattered. Here at the backwater edge of the galaxy, that yields dreams of expansion were not merely forwarded, but rendered utterly laughable. Below, the planet seemed unchanged. No grand explosion, no world-shattering impact. Just the quiet home of a human settlement picking up the pieces of an unexpected encounter. A chirp from the escape pod's primitive comm system broke his reverie. It was the gruff voice again, weary and strained. "You're still up there, and Lean will hold off on finishing the job long as you feel. Get out of our system, and don't come back." Velrek, once an emblem of Zeal arrogance, managed a single croaking word and response. Acknowledged. He initiated the pod's launch sequence, the XT-97. His command due windows rapidly away. His last image was not a victorious human celebrating amidst wreckage, nor was it of the vast, unexplored reaches of the galaxy ripe for opportunistic conquest. Instead, it was the bulky form of a human railgun, its ungainly barrel stark against the blue marble of the planet, and unyielding, sentinel promising swift annihilation to any who might underestimate the primitive creatures below ever again. As his pod hurtled away, Commander Veilrek knew the Geo would not report this encounter. To do so would invite ridicule or worse, a preemptive strike from other civilizations who understood the true terror humanity possessed. Perhaps in time the galaxy would learn of the guns that laughed at energy shields. But for now, the secret would remain with the survivors of the XT-97 and the colonists guarding their backwater world. And Commander Vale Rec wondered just how long that secret could be kept. Cautious observation mixed with a slow grind of bureaucracy followed. The crippled escape pods returned to the Zeal homeworld bearing survivors who spoke little and less often about their humiliating defeat. Initially dismissed as an isolated freak incident stroke of terrible luck, the encounter began to nod the edges of the Zeal expensive compact. Whispers started in corridors of power, seeding doubt about the true extent of the Zeal's technological supremacy. After all, who knew what other monstrosities might lurk in the galactic wilderness? A quiet collective reluctance to explore further afield took root. Instead, efforts focused on fortifying existing territories, perfecting energy shielding techniques, and developing countermeasures specifically designed to defeat hypervelocity projectiles. The humans were none the wiser. Their long-range sensors detected the shift in geal activity, but they lacked the context to understand the profound fear they didn't still. Life on the colony continued much as it had before, punctuated by the occasional launch of a colossal railgun round into deep space up routine test, or perhaps a silent reminder to whatever might be watching. Meanwhile, Commander Vale Rag became a pariah of sorts. He was in high Ngyo's ranks on the promise of easy conquest. That promise now crumbled to dust beneath his clawed feet. Shunted to a backwater research outpost, he was tasked with a singular, almost insulting objective: develop a shield that could withstand a railgun strike. Time seemed to eat itself whilst Vale rock and dirt as punishment. Prototypes were built, tested, and inevitably turned into smoldering craters by merciless technicians. Valreed grew haggard, haunted by the blinding flash, the droning whine, the unstoppable projectiles. He began to suspect the task was not merely difficult but impossible. Kinetic energy was brutally simple, a fundamental force, unlike the elegant manipulation of electromagnetism, upon which yield technology had been founded. And so with growing dread, Commander Felreich came to a horrifying realization. Perhaps the humans, in their primitive focus on such monstrous weapons, had stumbled upon an uncomfortable universal truth. Sometimes the simplest, most brutal solution was also the most effective. Perhaps they were not barbarians. That label now seemed to rest uncomfortably upon the one's mighty gills. Expensive compact. Decades slipped past, blurring the traumatic edges of the past. Commander Val Rack, now frail and grayed, found himself the reluctant repository of a terrible secret. This yield's new doctrine of defense and consolidation, and lulled them into a false sense of security. Yet he knew it was only a matter of time until another ambitious race, or perhaps even a splinter of his own people, stumbled upon a vulnerable world that happened to be under human protection. The old arrogance had faded, replaced by a non-paranoia, and all but the youngest generations, the fear of the young-seen railgun of the unstoppable projectile, lingered beneath the surface of every strategic meeting, every shipyard requisition form. Geal explorers scanned the stars not with dreams of expansion, but with the dread of finding a bulky gunmetal sentinel aimed squarely at them. The humans, in their obliviousness, continued to thrive. Their colony grew, transforming into a recognized though isolated outpost. Trade delegations from other more cautious species arrived bearing gifts of advanced technology in exchange for tales of the lead. In Devry railguns, none dared to encroach too closely, for the stories echoed down the years, gaining a mythic quality. The monstrous weapons, the laughing defenders, the alien ship punched through and through. The Vale Rack, nearing the end of his lifespan, made a desperate decision. Using back channels and coded transmissions, he reached out to the human colony. The message was brief, devoid of titles or formalities.
You must want the Galaxy Shield technology is useless against job weapons. Do not share your secrets. We made a terrible mistake, and that has swelled too.
He received no response, doubted he ever would. It was not in the nature of humans to understand the fear they now held over an entire interstellar civilization. Perhaps they would brush it off as nonsense or assume a trick, that the message alone brought Valrak some measure of solace in his final days. When the end came, He passed away known as a proud commander, but as the harbinger of a chilling truth, the humans might never realize the profound shadow they cast upon the galaxy, nor how their mere existence had altered the course of history. Perhaps it was better that way. Let them remain the unassuming guardians, the quiet protectors with their impossibly powerful guns, and let the rest of the Gills and any others who dared listen cower in the knowledge that sometimes the quietest voice carried the biggest threat. The galaxy turned as it always had, and buyers expanded and didn't crumbled into stardust. New technological marvels were unveiled, reshaping trade, communication, and the very fabric of galactic civilization. Even among the cautious zeal and echo of their once conquest-driven nature began to resurface. Yet one thing remained constant. None dared set an uninvited foot upon a world bearing the unmistakable stamp of humanity. Lush worlds with the telltale sign of shielded orbital railgun arrays were simply avoided. Whispers of the unkillable species rippled through space lanes, spoken both in unlingering fear. Meanwhile, humanity expanded as humans always do. Additional colonies were established, trade routes bloomed, and a slow but undeniable respect began to spread for these unique and unexpectedly formidable beings. It wasn't the sleek starships or sophisticated energy manipulation that caught the galaxy's attention. It was the ungainly railguns, those planet-cracking behemoths that roared across the light years. Of course, there were those foolish enough to test the legend, pirate raiders driven by desperation or greed, but sometimes descend on a fresh, unprotected human outposts, and the outcome was always the same. The lumbering railgun turrets would awaken. Their targeting solutions precise, their hypervelocity projectiles would roar into the void, and the raiders would cease to exist. In the corner of a bustling spaceport on a world far removed from the original human colony, a young GL officer listened intently as a grizzled human mercenary recounted such a tale of a glass of acrid liquor.
No ambassador selling we were easy pickings. The merch chuckled.
His voice still rough with the edge of combat.
They didn't even get a shot off for the real guns, laid them up like fireworks on festival day.
The shield officer, a product of the new cautious generation, shuddered. He'd heard these stories before, of course, but there was something chilling in the merc's casual tone, yet or certainty, as the night wore on, and the drinks flowed more readily. The merc leaned in with a conspiratorial whisper. "Tell you some, friend."
He slurred, Austrail guns ain't the worst thing those folks have hidden away. You see, once they figured out how to punch holes in starships, well, let's just say they got creative. The GL officer did not inquire further. He didn't have to the fear buried deep in the collective Zeal 3.
Unconsciousness was enough. He finished his drink, paid his tab, and stepped out into the neon-bathed streets, casting a weary glance up at the star-strewn sky. Somewhere out there, that humans hummed along with their lives and their planet-killing weapons. For now, they were protectors, however unwitting, that the universe was a fickle mistress, and the officer couldn't shake the feeling that one day the guns might be turned outward, aimed not in defense, but towards a new horizon. And if that day ever came, the Zeal and the entirety of the galaxy could have only hoped they would be on the right side of the barrel. Thank you for tuning into Sci-Fi Humanity. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more thrilling tales from the frontier of science fiction. Your support helps us bring you more captivating content. Remember, in the vastness of the cosmos, never underestimate the power of the primitive. See you next time.